He's playing us. He's playing us. He's got too much skin in the game, and he's dumping his position.
What if he's right?
You want him to be right.
Yes, I do. The banks have given us 25% interest rates on credit cards. They have screwed us on student loans that we can never get out from under. Then this guy walks into my office and says, those same banks got greedy, they lost track of the market, and I can profit off of their stupidity. Yeah, I want him to be right.
Welcome to Money Unplugged. I'm Chris Hill. Thanks for being here. Today on the show, I talk with Hannah Cole. She's a tax expert and the founder of Sunlight Tax, a financial firm that specializes in working with people who are self-employed. And here's the thing. I know a few tax experts, and every one of them started out that way, meaning they knew what they wanted to do, they studied accounting in school, and entered the workforce focused on taxes. And what's interesting to me about Hannah is that she started out at the complete other end of the spectrum. She went to school to study art. She got a master's degree in painting and was a working artist in New York City. Then she became an accountant. And the reason has a lot to do with the way she was treated the first time she ever sat down with a tax professional. And like a lot of conversations on this podcast, we talk about how money affected the mood in her home growing up. So let's get into it with Hannah Cole. What's the earliest memory you have when it comes to money?
Probably the earliest, because it had a real emotional impact, was my father is an architect. And architecture is a tricky profession because it's a kind of canary in the coal mine for the economy. When economic straits get dicey, architects don't get hired. They basically would fire everybody but the principals at the architecture firm, when in a recession. And so I just remember more than once in my childhood, like a family sit down at the dinner table, like, hey kids, we're going to, stop spending. We're not going to be eating out. We're not going to maybe do as much soccer, just like sort of belt tightening conversations. So those are my earliest memories of money, and they felt a little scary.
I would think so. And you had how many siblings?
Just one, just a brother.
Okay. And were you older, younger?
I'm the oldest.
Okay. Mm-hmm. To the extent that you can remember and feel like you can share this, the first time that happens, that's obviously scary. Mm-hmm. The second time that happens, do you remember your emotions around that? Because I wouldn't be surprised if you said it was scarier. I also wouldn't be surprised if you said, oh, okay, we got through this once. We can get through it again.
That's interesting. I've never been asked to compare one versus another. I think I would say just at least equally scary. But I remember as a child just feeling like I had no baseline. I was being told something was worse than it normally was, but I didn't know what normal looked like. I didn't know how much money my parents were spending, or, I never actually saw which things really got cut. I mean, yes, we didn't eat out as much, maybe that, but actually they did a lot to try to maintain life as normal. It just was like anxiety. It just was sort of like, hey, this thing that I'm really upset about is happening, is actually more like what was going on. My dad was in a bad mood.
Did the opposite happen when there were good economic times where your parents sit you down and say, hey, you know what? We're actually going to go out a little bit more. Things are going better.
That's funny that it seems like that should be what happened. That is not what happened. I do remember that my dad bought real estate when things were going well. He was a very successful architect, and he's, quote, retired, but he actually still does architecture. He retired as a principal of this very large multinational architecture firm, so he could be a solo architect and only take the work he wants. So he's just as busy as an architect now as he ever was at age 79.
Did you get the sense that he was as good at real estate investment as he was at being an architect?
Actually, yes. My dad has crushed it in real estate because architects know zoning. He's pretty plugged in. So he was always very, very aware. He had a philosophy about buying property. Like that was his way of investing. I think he would, he was a principal, and they would he had a profit share, and they had really, really good years sometimes, and in addition to extremely bad years. But in the really good years, when he would get a huge chunk of money, he would buy a building, he would buy a property. It wasn't stock. So that is kind of like what got into my head as the way to, what to do with your money. But his philosophy was buy near public transportation, like a public transportation hub. And so he's really proud that of all the properties he owns, which it's a number of them, maybe like 6 to 8 different properties, not one of them has ever lost value in a recession when other properties did, because he made a real study of like walking distance from a subway stop just retains its value. So it was interesting. He really used his like knowledge of buying patterns and development going on in the area.
Well played. What was the first job you had when you were a kid?
Well, babysitting was the first job. My first like official job where I got a W-2 was working at Au Bon Pain as a cashier. I
remember it well.
Oh man, yeah. And there are a lot of them in the Boston area, and which is where I grew up. Yeah, interacting with the public, I learned some things there. It was weird.
It is weird, but it's a topic that's come up before on this show. I feel like there's no substitute for it. Like in the long run, I could wave a magic wand, everyone would have to wait on the public at some point in their life for a summer at least.
I could not agree more. And I actually, from there, I did a lot of waiting tables when I was younger, and especially as a younger artist. And waiting tables even more so, because being a cashier was a lot easier than being a waitress. And boy, was that hard work. I tip really well now, and I always will, because I know how incredibly difficult that is. It's exhausting.
It is, but don't you also find that because you've been a waitress, you know how restaurants work, and sometimes the wait person actually isn't that good?
Oh, yeah, I do. Well, actually, it makes me really upset when I go to these, after COVID, a lot of like tipping culture has really shifted. And I noticed that there's a lot of restaurants where you order at the counter and they deliver the food to your table, but you have to get up to get your fork. And I feel like I sweated so hard to get that 20% when I was waiting tables. Like when they flip the screen around and the options are 20, 25, and 30%. Right. When they're not even bringing me the fork, I have to get up to get my own glass of water. It makes me a little salty.
I'm just going to tip myself since I appear to be the wait person here.
Yeah.
So let's move on to college. You went to Yale to study art history. Do I have that right?
That's correct.
And was there a conversation with your parents, and I'm thinking primarily of your dad, about the economics of studying art history?
Oh, man. Yes. I got 2 competing messages as a kid growing up. It was, do what you love. You can be anything you want to. If you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life, right? I learned that. And then I learned art is not a real job. You'll never make a living. Have a plan B. And these
follow your passion, but not that.
But not that one. So these were really conflicting, competing messages that kind of battled in my head. And I would say that my entire career is a story of that battle. My father actually forbade me from going into architecture because he thought it was such an unsteady, economically so unsteady. And like that memory of the rockiness of, him having to lay off a quarter to a third of his staff every 7 years was like pretty up there in my mind. So, I became a painter. So obviously I had the last laugh.
Right. Yeah. That came back to bite your dad, I think. And then you graduate from Yale. What are you doing for work right after that? Because at some point you go to Boston University for a master's degree.
Yep. Yeah. So I actually did get a job in art history. So my degree is in art history at Yale, though I did a lot of fine art, studio art there. And I got a job in art history. I got a job as a slide librarian at the Boston University Art History Department, which was actually a pretty awesome job. They were digitizing their collection at that point. So I sort of scanned slides all day. But like, talk about a way to reinforce what I learned in school. I just was constantly looking at art and doing labels. So it was quite wonderful. And I got to talk to art historians who would come in and put their carousels together for their lectures. And what I found was that when the art students came in, the studio students from the MFA program, I just found myself so jealous of them. Like, I was asking them questions. How do you do it? Where's your studio? What are you working on? It kind of like signaled to me that jealousy started signaling to me that I was going the wrong direction by trying to stay in art history, and that I really belonged in studio art.
So did working at Boston University make pursuing a master's degree there more affordable?
No, it did not. It exposed me to that program, and I did end up eventually, or a couple of years later, applying to that program and getting in. But I just had exposure. I think that's all. And to be honest, it was a kind of job where I had some idle time at my desk. So I sent a lot of my graduate school applications from that job. Maybe that's not officially what I should have been doing with my time, but it was very helpful to me.
I'm sure you're not the only one who was double dipping like that.
Yeah.
Where does finance and specifically taxes come into your life? You graduate from BU with a master's degree in painting. Are you setting up a studio then? Are you selling your artwork?
Yeah, so I became a studio artist full-time. I figured in my early 20s, I was going to give it my all, just try to make a go of becoming a full-time artist. And I like I said, that competing message of like, you're never going to make money doing this was always there. And that jealous feeling that I had of other artists really made me feel like I am going to have serious regret in my life if I don't try this. So what I did was just put on this hat, like, I am going to go all out sprint and just try to make this work. And if I fail, but I gave it my all, I'm not going to live in regret. So that was my philosophy. Like, I'm going to give it 100%. And if I fail, I fail. If I need to, retool my career later on, I will. But like, if I can't take a risk in my 20s, what are my 20s for? So yeah, I wouldn't take that back. I think that was a good call. But where money came in, where taxes came in, you could not have convinced me. Like, I steered clear of economics classes. I didn't take a single personal finance class. Like, I didn't want anything to do with capitalism or money. In fact, I was pretty much the opposite. But it was just the school of hard knocks that started to make it like show up for me. I started to realize that I knew nothing. And then when I sat down with my dad's accountant, the first year out of my MFA program, when I was like, I had my first year of income and, basically a small business on my hands, I sat down with my dad's accountant, and his first words out of his mouth were, "So when are you going to get a real job?"
Oh, great.
I felt so insulted. Like, yes, I didn't know anything, but I was there to educate myself, and he was there to demean me. Like, he was not there to be like, "Hey, let me help you." He was there to make fun of me for how little I knew about finances. And I just felt like that was mean. I didn't like being treated that way.
It is.
Yeah. So I felt like I didn't dedicate my life to the arts because I think it's frivolous. I actually think it's really important, like an important part of humanity. And so that planted a seed in my head. That seed did not grow for a few years out, but eventually, over some time and some more experiences where money kind of like reared its head again, I actually ended up going back to school to study accounting, because I had this vision in my head, like, creative people really need a place to be able to learn how to do their taxes, how to manage their money, where they feel respected and where they're just going to get the info rather than get the info plus be insulted at the same time. That was my vision for my company, Sunlight Tax.
I'm curious, though, on an emotional level, particularly given everything you said about how far away from capitalism and economics as you were, particularly in college and in graduate school, on some level, did you almost have to make peace with money before you could get to the point where now, with this book you've written, you're teaching people about it?
What an interesting question. Make peace with money. I think, yes, I did. The practical reality of it was pretty strong. I lived in New York City. I paid rent, not just on an apartment, but on a studio. I mean, life was expensive, and those bills come and they show you. I think I had some attitudes that I had from being an artist that are healthy and really served me well. For example, the way that my income comes, and a lot of artists are like this, I will get my money in big chunks all at one time, but then I might have long, dry spells. So it's like very lumpy income. And that is a stressful way to have your money never know if it's going to come again. So it did give me a positive habit of squirreling away money, being very, very low to the ground with my expenses. And if I would sell, have a show and sell 5 paintings or get a big grant, I would just stash that money away. So that is a habit that has served me well and continues to. But on the other hand, I had no idea what to do with the money. So I stashed it. I would buy CDs, which is okay. But I was scared of investing. And so I think it's been really helpful. I read a Susie Orman book. I just sat, gave it 2 hours every day for a week and just read a Susie Orman book. And I was like, okay, I need to teach myself how to do this. And so that was really where I learned investing.
Pop quiz. What's the easiest way to become a better cook? Get better seasonings. It's officially summer, people. It's time to get the grill fired up and let Dizzy Pig help you make the most of grilling season. Dizzy Pig Barbecue is my favorite source of rubs and seasonings. They make incredible blends for whatever you're cooking. Steak, chicken, pork, seafood, veggies, and whether you like a little heat or a lot of heat, they have something just for you. If you're not sure where to start, try the Crossroads Barbecue Rub. It is my personal go-to for grilled meats. In fact, I just ordered some more because I ran out. And if you really want to wow your guests, get a bottle of Dizzy Pig's glazed and infused sauce. It's fantastic. Every time I put the bottle down on the table, it is a hit. Stock up now. Go to dizzypigbbq.com. Use the promo code MONEY and get 10% off your first order. That's dizzypigbbq.com. Promo code MONEY for 10% off and get your grill ready for summer. All right, let's get back to Hannah. How much did you and your husband talk about money before you got married?
We did, but maybe not enough still. I mean, we also didn't know what we didn't know. We were definitely aligned about the role of money in life. I would say he's maybe more the spender than me. I'm the squirrel. I'm stashing nuts. But we both, I think, have similar values around money. I think neither one of us is into conspicuous consumption or, flamboyance with our money. And I think we're pretty aligned on savings. I didn't feel safe with a person who I thought would flame away our retirement. And so I 100% knew that he had a solid retirement plan in place. That was helpful.
I want to ask you one thing that has nothing to do with money. Because of all the art forms, for me, painting seems like magic. In the universe of creative arts, I understand how music works. I understand acting, dancing, writing. I know how all of those work. But I genuinely cannot comprehend how someone can look at a blank canvas and create something beautiful. So can you help me understand what it is actually like to be a painter? Where does that come from?
Yeah. I mean, it started with drawing. Painting is the 4-dimensional version of drawing. You add color. And I don't start, yes, the canvas is blank, but I don't start with no idea in my head. I would never produce anything if that was how I tried to start. So, I taught painting I was a professor at Boston University, and I taught my students, like, look at something, take your cue from somewhere. So even if you're going to make an abstract painting, what you want is to be looking at nature or set up a little still life with a lighting situation. And even if you're not going to paint that, as it looks, draw your sense of lighting and volume and form from something in reality, because your imagination will run out faster than nature will run out of ideas. So that's what I always advise, is like, have a source, right? Learning how to draw and learning how to paint is just a skill. I mean, the same way that learning how to manage money is a skill, or doing your taxes is a skill, like learning how to draw is just a skill. And it's actually a really beautiful skill, because it is the thing that most people who say they can't draw, the thing that they think, what happens is you come to a sheet of paper, and let's say you're trying to draw a flower in a vase that's sitting in front of you. Most people come to that and they don't realize they're doing it, but what they're actually doing when they try to draw that is they're imposing an idea of what a flower is and trying to draw their idea of a flower and not actually looking at what's there. So the act of drawing is actually one of the most humble acts in the world. It's very related to meditation, where you try to forget what's in your head. Don't think, like, actually come to it like, I don't know what a flower looks like, and just look at what you actually see. Because usually there's a lot more surprises in something that's sitting in front of you, rather than your like idea of a flower is like a stem and like petals, like a sundial. Does that make sense?
Still seems like magic, but that was very helpful. So thank you for that. Let's go to the speed round. What is a thing you have bought that makes you happy?
Oh, just recently, I did a week at a pottery camp at the John C. Campbell Folk School, where I learned surface design for pottery. And that was like pure joy. Yeah, throwing pots on the wheel and doing sgraffito carving into them. It's wonderful.
I could also see that being a little therapeutic, just like, working with your hands, getting out some aggression.
Absolutely. Pottery is so good for that. Yeah.
Have you ever made a purchase in your adult life that you regret and sometimes you find yourself still thinking about it?
Oh my gosh, yes. And actually, as a business owner, I would say most of these purchases are there.
For your business?
Yeah, because I spend more in my business than I spend in my personal life. And so sometimes those mistakes are bigger. I have tried to buy programs that were terrible and actually didn't work at all, and really felt angry and kind of ripped off, or just like they didn't work or they didn't really understand my problem. So I kick the tires a lot more now before I, join with a coach or buy into some program. But even so, I find that it's hard to tell which ones are going to be really valuable and which ones are not. I unfortunately still keep, spending money sometimes that doesn't pan out.
Other than the week at pottery camp, what is the last thing you splurged on just for yourself, not for your family or anyone else?
On Mother's Day, I got myself a massage. That was pretty great.
What is something about money that you wish you knew earlier in life?
Compound interest. What is the eighth wonder of the world? I teach people now about compound interest. I'm like, did you know? Like, it's kind of surprising. There's like people who don't know how magical it is. So that for sure. And just that investing does not have to be complicated or scary, that the simpler you keep it, you just follow the basic rules.
Do you think compound interest is one of those lessons that takes a little while to sink in? Because just in my own experience, I understood the math of compound interest when I was in my 20s and first starting to think about investing. Mm-hmm. And it took a couple of decades before I actually started to see it in action in a way that I thought, oh, okay, now I get it. Like, I understood the math, but on an emotional level, it didn't hit me for a while.
Well, I mean, what you're describing is the actual way that your own accounts work. You put the money in for the first time and you see nothing, right? Like, you have to actually have your money in for a decade to actually get the experience of like, oh, look, that grew. So I think you're illustrating the point beautifully.
What is a charitable cause that you like to support?
Oh my goodness, World Central Kitchen. And I say this with personal experience because I live in Asheville and was hit by Hurricane Helene a year and a half ago. And, I'm from a upper middle class family. We make a good income, but you know what? There was no water. We had no food. And I had meals. I was served meals by World Central Kitchen. And so were all my neighbors, everyone I knew. And they also have a beautiful business model where they kept a lot of restaurants in town from closing because they actually would set up operations in a restaurant and paid the staff. So these people who were otherwise out of work got paid. So I have all the respect for Jose Andres. He could have just gone on to be a celebrity chef and made $1 million in licensing. And instead he did this unbelievable, generous thing and created this organization that does incredible good during disasters. So as a personal beneficiary, I would say that one I've seen up close and it's wonderful.
Do you have a favorite movie or TV series that has money as a through line?
Money as a through line. I sometimes really enjoy watching reality TV, and kind of one of the things I do with my daughters when I watch it with them is just we talk about how materialistic it is and that it's not real life. I use it as a counter example. So that's pretty indirect, but I would say that is a sort of a bit of a teaching method for me.
No, money absolutely has a through line in most, if not all, reality TV shows.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Last thing is a penny for your thoughts. And this is just any bit of wisdom you want to share with people who are listening that you've picked up along the way. And it doesn't have to be about money. It can be about anything.
Yeah. Well, I was listening to one of your past episodes, and I think someone was talking about culture, understand different cultures. And I think that understanding different cultures has played into basically how I set up a successful business. A lot of money information is directed at a certain kind of person without a lot of awareness that that's the case. So I found as a woman, and especially when I was younger, as a younger woman, a lot of financial education was not directed at me at all. And it assumed that I was male or that I would not have to contend with pregnancy and breastfeeding and taking time off to raise a child. And those things are very real and not frivolous and important. And so I have found just the culture, learning about money from women who have been through that experience has been really helpful and grounding to me to acknowledge things that are real in my life, like child rearing. And also just, the arts are a culture, and they're a culture that clashes pretty hard with the culture of finance and accounting. And I think of myself as a cross-cultural communicator between accountants and artists. And I find great joy in that. But it's all about unlocking the fact that these two cultures are quite different and understanding you have to speak the language of one with the other.
You're bilingual.
Very much so.
There you go. Hannah's book, Taxes for Humans, Simplify Your Taxes and Change the World When You're Self-Employed, is available everywhere. And I put a link in the episode description. So check it out. I'm Chris Hill. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next week.